Have a good meeting.
All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Employee Benefits Compensation Commission meeting for August 6, 2020 via Zoom. The meeting is currently being live streamed on YouTube, and currently we'll take the roll call. Georgia Horty could not be here this evening. Carolyn Zinner called and said that she could not be here. Emery Plitt.
Here.
Linda Packard could not be here this evening. Chris Ritchie.
Here.
Jim Ringsocker, I'm here. Patrick Seipolt.
Present.
Fred Wills.
Here.
And Chief Teresa Walter.
Here.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for getting together on such short notice. Chris reached out to me, and he had a few issues he'd like to bring up. With COVID, we were supposed to meet back in, I think it was like February we last met. I don't have the meeting minutes because they're at my office. We haven't been back. Even if I'm allowed back in the office in my building, I'm not allowed back in my actual office at government for you. So I'll have the meetings minutes out. I think I did actually send them out, but I don't have them in the official form, so we'll have to approve them at a later date. So we were supposed to have a presentation on the Ways and Benefits Commission status in April. That was postponed due to the state of emergency. And as soon as the mayor lets me know what his plans are, we'll proceed with that. There's no rush. We haven't moved much this year. We're kind of in a holding pattern trying to figure out exactly what we're going to focus on now. Now we're going to move on to number 3 with Director of HR, Chris Ritchie, with an update for our health insurance renewal.
Hi, everybody. Well, I guess first, before we start, Adam recommended that we, make mention if we have a quorum or do not.
We do, yes.
But okay, we do have a quorum. Okay.
We have a quorum.
All right. So the health insurance plan renewal, we did have a big change this year. We switched from United Healthcare to Cigna. We don't like hopping around from insurance plans. It is, just not a thing that we like to do. We don't think it looks very good. However, COVID-19 was a curveball we weren't expecting, and revenue to the city took a hit. So the prudent decision was to take a real hard look at the cost. So we did what we normally do. We send our insurance plan out to the market for bid. We received several bids from different insurance carriers. Cigna came in really strong. We went back to United Healthcare and we informed them of the fiscal challenges that we were having. And they came off of their numbers a little bit. We were originally facing a 33% increase. Through a very interesting series of events, we wound up Cigna, their final and best offer was a 10% increase in premium. It's an identical plan to what we had. It was a 10% increase in premium. Health insurance companies, they can only peel back so much of the premium. So some insurance companies have been offering what they refer to as incentives, which is kind of like a rebate. Their credit structure that they had, when you take that into consideration with the actual insurance premiums, it knocked it down to a 2.9% increase. So what's going to happen is the employees are paying the higher premiums. So is the city. Obviously, we still have the 80-20 split. And then later in the year, Cigna is going to be giving us this credit, and then we're going to split it up equitably amongst the employees based on which plan they have, whether it's individual, employee and spouse, family, or employee and children. I guess that's the big news. We wound up coming. We landed at a much different place than I think any of us thought that we would going into this, facing a 33% increase. However, Cigna has been outstanding to work with so far. They really did understand where we were coming from with our challenges, and they worked with us very hard to get our business. So I'm optimistic that we will continue to receive that level of service. So does anybody have any questions on that piece? No? Okay.
Not right now. So if I could, you said you're going to spread it out equitably. Is that so you're going to you're going to divide it per capita, or you're going to divide it per expenditure from employees?
Yeah, so it isn't a neat and tidy 10% difference. So it's a 10% difference as a whole in premium. However, different insurance carriers use different algorithms to determine what the premium is for an individual, what the premium is for an employee and children, what the premium is for employee and spouse, and for family. So Cigna's algorithm that they use is different than United Healthcare. So some of the plans saw more than a 10% increase, and some of them saw less than a 10% increase, but it averages out as the whole to a 10% increase. So George is going to be doing all the math to where he's going to determine the actual percentages, and then depending on which type of insurance the employee elected, so individual, employee and spouse, employee and children, and family, they will receive their equitable share of that credit that we were receiving from Cigna. So it's not going to be like an even slice and dice across the board to everybody. We're gonna slice this up fairly based on how much the actual increase was to the employees. So the employees that are paying more, their increase was higher. They're going to be receiving a larger credit.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right, very good. Moving on to number 4, update on the wellness program, sir.
Yeah, so in part of the negotiations with Cigna, so the wellness program has been very important to this commission, and also very important to Patrick, the Director of Administration, and myself. It was one of the goals that he tasked me with when I first started to work for the city, was to create a robust and effective wellness program. So it's kind of an interesting challenge to do that. There's all kinds of balances. And this year, once again, finances have kind of taken precedence with COVID-19. So we negotiated Cigna's wellness program into this as well, and they gave us a $10,000 budget to help fund it. So their wellness program is called Motivate Me. We have one thing I really like about Cigna is we have a dedicated wellness advisor through them, and I have quarterly meetings with her. We actually had 2 meetings over the last 2 weeks to create our wellness strategy for the employees, and every month I'm going to be pushing out different communications. But basically, employees are going to be rewarded with gift cards for doing certain healthy activities or healthy behaviors. Later in the year, we are going to also try a citywide exercise challenge. It's going to be, obviously everybody in the city can compete, and it's going to be a wellness competition. So that's going to be coming after the new year. So I'm very optimistic about that. It's very nice for me, being we have a human resources department of 1. So it is very refreshing for me to have this person that I can rely on through Cigna, that is an expert in workplace wellness. So I'm very optimistic about that. We are going to be tracking not only what we do, but the participation rates. We are going to be surveying our employees to see if there's different kinds of incentives or different programs that we'd like to see for next year. This program also has a diabetes prevention program in it, so you can take a health risk assessment, and depending on how you score, you can qualify for this program. And it is a free education. You're given a health coach, and you're actually given a digital scale that syncs to your phone, and you meet with your health coach, and you talk about different goals and objectives and things like that. So it is primary focus is diabetes prevention, but they also come up with weight loss plans and things like that to help employees who may be at risk for diabetes or may want to go into a weight loss program.
Chris, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is the adjustment that they're going to make later on going to be based at all on actual loss experience?
No.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a really nice thing about Cigna. So to hop back to number 3. So the program we're in is actually a hybrid insurance approach between self-funded and fully insured.
Gotcha. Yep.
So Cigna is giving this credit. It is guaranteed. It is not based on performance. But if our insurance plan performs very well and we have a very good year, Cigna shares that profit with us. If we have a poor year and we have a lot of expenditures, they do not share in the overages. So Cigna absorbs all of that. So that was it's a nice little perk. If we have a good year, we will also see a little bit more money at the end of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Very good. Does anybody else have any other questions?
No question, just a comment. I want to acknowledge Chris's effort on both the wellness and the renegotiation this year with Cigna, as well as the negotiations last year. If you were to, and Chris can provide this, look at our overall health cost over the last, I think 5, maybe even as far as 7 years, despite some rather large claims, we have been trending in a fairly positive direction, especially as it relates to industry standards. So hats off to Chris on that for leading a lot of that charge and that champion those actions.
And
I'll
to
second that.
Patrick's point, I believe we are actually paying less for health insurance than we were. It was either 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years. So that's a real. Not many organizations can say that, and a lot of hard work has gone into that. Not just myself. There's been plenty of people. Patrick, George has been a great help with it.
And this is also in maintaining very subtle changes, but maintain the majority of the coverages and the benefits within the program. So it's not like we didn't cannibalize the program to keep the rates down.
Yeah, correct. We're not sacrificing quality for to be able to do this. We've been able to get kind of creative other ways. And then also one last thing about the wellness program I don't want to omit. So the Maryland Healthiest Businesses, we have been recognized. The City of Havre de Grace has received their Silver Award. The highest award you can get is Gold. We received their Silver Award for our efforts in workplace wellness for 2019. So that the physical award will arrive momentarily at the city, but 2 days ago I was at their Zoom meeting where they did the presentations, and it's nice to be recognized for those efforts and trying to have a meaningful wellness program.
Chris, this is Fred. Who was it that recognized us?
It's called Maryland Healthiest Businesses Wellness at Work Awards.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm just taking notes here. You say healthy businesses or healthiest businesses?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. No more questions on this? Chris, I also commend you for your efforts on this. I know it's something since since day one of the commission that we've been working on, and it's something that's, I know it's near and dear to your heart. Something that I know that you we discussed with your previous employment with Upper Chesapeake, with their plan, and then coming here with some ideas, and you've run with it very well, and really you've done a phenomenal job, and I commend you on that.
Thank you.
So moving on to number 5, discussion regarding sworn officers pay scale and compensation. Give the floor to Mr. Ritchie again.
Yeah, so I guess the last time we all met, I kind of kicked this out there that some police officers brought to our attention that they were kind of confused about the application of the sworn officer pay scale. To refresh everybody's memory, I guess it was 3 years ago now, the pay scale was recommended by this commission. So some of the officers were saying that they had, they had similar years of experience as other officers, and they were in different steps in the pay scale. And I kicked it out to this group, and the thought was that looking at this fell within the scope of the commission, and it would be a project that they'd like to take on. So I emailed everybody several documents earlier today. One of them is the police department pay scale, just so everybody had that fresh. And the other one is the spreadsheet that I put together. Now, this is a spreadsheet of all of the police officers that work for the city. Yep, that one that Councilmember Linksocker is holding up. I have removed the names because obviously I don't want to put that in here, and I've just replaced people's names with the alphabet. And then after we got to Z, I just started off with AABBCC. So this is not comprehensive. There are a couple people missing, and the reason why I did that is if we have a position where we only have one person, one incumbent in that role, I did remove them just for their own privacy. So I have structured this spreadsheet so it is from top to bottom, it goes in order by rank. So the top represents the lowest rank, the bottom is the highest rank. Then within the ranks, I have organized it by years of service to the city. So this is not years of experience, but years of service to the city of Everett. So to try to keep things a little bit more organized for when you're looking at it. And then I've also thrown some highlighted cells in there just to bring things that, that you have a question. So for example, employee H and employee I were hired basically 1 month apart from each other, yet employee H is at a PFC grade 6 and employee I is at a PFC grade 7. Now, it's possible there may be relevant, like real reasons for this, like maybe employee H didn't receive an annual increase because they didn't have a satisfactory performance evaluation or something like that. I don't know that. I haven't done that level of research with this. But anyway, these highlighted cells shows that there is, there's some logical questions as to there's different years of service to the city and not necessarily the same kind of corresponding step. So I guess there's kind of two questions that we need to sift through on here. One is the application of the pay scale, the sworn officer pay scale. And unfortunately, I don't have the institutional knowledge because I wasn't employed by the city when you all were going through this. So frankly, I just don't know the intention of the commission on how the pay scale should be applied to the police officers. So there's that question. So just making sure that the pay scale was applied the way the commission envisioned or recommended, or however you would like to word that. And then the other piece is taking a look at these individuals and seeing, trying to find out gain an understanding as to why we have some of these differences. And then does the commission have a recommendation on action? Is there a direction the commission would recommend going with it? So I think when we talked a little bit about last time, we had agreed that I would provide the spreadsheet, and then we would kind of slice and dice, I guess, roles. So sort of divide the commission and assign some tasks for people to work on this, and then come back to the next meeting.
Okay, is that something that we're looking to work on, like dividing up the task force now, or something like the discussion on the task force now, and then at the next meeting, boil that down and then determine a task force?
Well, I mean, that would be your call, I think, as the chairperson, or maybe the group's call as a whole, since we have a quorum. But you know, ideally, when we're talking about people's money and compensation, I prefer to do things sooner than later. That's why I reached out to you to see if we could have this meeting. Just because, we haven't been able to meet for months. See, if everything gets locked down again and we can't meet, and we already had roles assigned, at least we could be doing some work in the background.
Okay. Well, just from experience wise, I'd really like to see Fred as a numbers guy, Chief as the experience, and then she has the vested interest with her force, work with you three, trying to boil down exactly what happened, how we can go forth. If you guys are amenable to that, maybe sitting on a task force and then reporting back next month on something that maybe some avenues we can approach, find out exactly how it was applied, how we can remedy this issue. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
Sure, I'm fine with that. I think that's a great idea.
I mean, there are some things on here I see, like between Officer H, I, and J. Officer H was the recruit, and they're step 6. I and J, they're both 7s. They were both laterals. I can deduce that obviously the laterals were probably brought in at a higher scale.
That was not going to be
but I
my
don't know.
Well,
I'm sorry?
Distinction between laterals and and what we'll call rookies who had no previous experience.
Right, and we actually took that into consideration when we were developing the pay scale that we're in now.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
the laterals were actually brought in at a higher rate than the rookies or the recruits would have been.
But you couldn't get them otherwise.
Yeah, and that's true.
that was the logic at the time, right?
Oh, I
Yeah,
understand that logic.
Even more so now.
Absolutely.
The other thing people remember is that anybody hired prior to 17 was under the old scale. So I'm just, and that'd be one of the first things we would probably look at as our little work team here.
Correct, and that's really important. And I think, and I'm just speculating on this, but when we went on ahead and applied or put the people where they should be, I don't think that they were actually put in the right positions. So, but that's something that Fred, you and I and Chris could look at.
Right. We were just in general, for the history and for the people who are hearing this for the first time, if anybody's watching out there, the goal was to hit problem years in the scale, and to help get through some bumpy times where we were losing people to aid our retention and or to recruit at a certain year or level. So the scale is not a linear scale. And that's causing some of these anomalies. That's something we can look into as we go to get together. Just for as a group, Chris and Chief, earlier in the week is better for me. Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesdays. I can go anytime. I can go to the office, but Thursdays through the weekends, I tend to get a little more hectic. So that works in. I can come any Monday morning you want, or Tuesday, whatever. So just FYI, as you set these things up for us to meet as a subgroup.
Sounds good. That works for me too.
Good.
Gentlemen,
I'd
Chief,
volunteer, since George and I pretty much put the scale together. I'd like to be a part of that if I could be. If it's not necessary, I can always interject through Chris or whatever the group would like, whatever in the greater good.
I'm fine with that if you guys are.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
fine
mind,
with
I
that.
don't mind Patrick joining us.
PS, all right, I'll put that on there. All right, well, gentlemen and chief, I thank you so much for your participation and volunteering for that.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions regarding this subject?
So I have another comment regarding
Please.
that I want to toss out to the commission. So we have a very interesting climate right now in law enforcement, and frankly, that has caused us to lose some police officers. So we are short-staffed at the moment. And that is compounded a bit because I think it's time to revisit the entry rates even for laterals now. My understanding is Harford County Sheriff's Department just substantially changed their pay scale for their police officers. And while we understand we can't compete directly with them, we have nowhere near the budget they do. That will have a ripple effect. So we're currently a little bit behind, and now we're going to be moving even further behind. So I wanted to toss it out to the group to see if the commission felt it would be appropriate to do a study of police officer compensation and see if we need to revisit our pay scale for the city.
Could we
I
just
think-
go ahead, chief?
I really do think that is something that we do have to look at. And Chris is absolutely right. I don't have an $83 million budget. I think the sheriff's office budget is around that, anywhere between 83 and 86. I don't have that kind of a budget. And I absolutely understand that. But I think at least to be competitive, getting people into the door, I think we should look at bumping it up. I really, really do. And I'm not talking, like thousands and thousands of extra dollars, but I do think that we do need to look at increasing. And I know Aberdeen and Bel Air are also redoing their pay scales. I know they're looking at the sheriff's office, but they're the same. I shouldn't be speaking for those other agencies, but I know that they don't have the same kind of money as the sheriff's office does. But they are looking at increasing their starting pay as we speak right now. So
It's something that should be ongoing, like every couple of years you ought to be doing that.
and that is correct. And that, unfortunately, years and years ago, even prior to me coming to Havity Grace, they redid the pay scale. The police department redid the pay scale. Unfortunately, they only had, I believe it was like 6 steps. And then after the 6th step, or the 6th year, you plateaued. You didn't really get an increase unless there was a cost of living that was included in that. And that was one of the reasons why we ended up in the predicament that we were in. And I think that also was one of the reasons why it led us to redoing the pay scale. I think it was in 2017. But again, we also had determined that we would have to keep looking at the pay scale. And it might not be, like I said, substantial amount of money, but that is something that should be occurring on a regular basis.
Yeah, and you got to take into consideration what we sometimes call grade creep.
Correct. Yep.
And that can create inequities even though you didn't intend it.
That is absolutely correct. You're right, sir.
Yeah,
So
so
I
to
think
Chris's
the study-
point, I think part of this committee's, Chris, I guess he volunteered to take on a task, and that is to gather the information from our sister municipalities in the county, as well as the county's scale and benefits, and then could that all have to come into factor when we're looking to, I guess, what would I call it, stroke this scale that we have or restructure it if it's, and then we determine what's warranted and what isn't.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And there might be some information available through the IACP too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can
Previously,
check that out.
we actually compiled all this data when we went through this the first time. Could we just plug the new numbers into that table, Fred?
More than that.
Yeah, there was more to this scale than that first time. Chief can attest, well, those and Fred, those that were here, it was an arduous task
Mhm.
to get the scales that are before us today, both in the civilian and the officers. There was several gyrations, wasn't there, Chief? And,
Yes,
Fred.
yes, there
And,
were.
And some contentious discussion. It was good.
It was good
It was
discussion.
good,
It
though.
was good discussion because we learned a lot. We got to see things, well, from a civilian, I got to see things through law enforcement officers' eyes. And I think vice versa, they got to see some of the challenges we had. So I thought it was actually, yeah, it was spirited at times, but very much a learning process. So I think taking that's why I want to be a part of it too. We can bring all that history back into this now because actually all of us that are on this committee, with the exception of Chris, we're there. I mean, we've lived through it already. And then with Chris's expertise, of course, we can only be better.
Yeah, I mean, and I still have all the information from when we were doing this in
All
2017.
those gyrations, huh?
I did, every iteration that we came up with, actually,
Yeah.
I was looking at it today and I got a big old headache. But yes, I still have all the information.
Chris brings up a request that I think we looked at about a year ago and sort of, I don't know if it fell on the wayside because of the current environment with the health and everything, but we were sort of saying, should we look at it or shouldn't we?
Right.
I know I was going to do kind of a review of what we did and how much has it delta in the last 3 to 5 years, 3 or 4 years. So I think getting back to Chris's original request, I think that's a separate, it's not just tied to this table, it's tied to a broader question.
Correct.
Which one of our first things we did was to show that big matrix of how other people did, what everybody was giving everybody and how it worked and the benefits behind it. So it wasn't just salaries, it was, some were benefits, some were salaries. So, I mean, to me, the valid, the next thing to do is to say, okay, well, let's put that on our docket again too. And, as much as I don't want to do it, but we should.
And I agree with you, Fred. I think it's not just us. I think we do have to look at, even civilian employees.
Yeah.
And I think, Chris, I think you also included in your information to us this evening, I think you did put a copy of the city civilian employee pay scale as well.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
And I actually am going to talk about that for agenda item 6.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right.
And actually, that could be a good segue if we're done on this one. Once we just have to establish a meeting time. We're going to do that offline. For the
Yeah, that's
subcommittee.
fine with me.
Okay.
Send an email out,
Perfect.
everybody can say a good time and we'll figure it out.
All right, then let's move on to number 6. Discussion regarding compensation philosophy for civilian employees. Mr. Ritchie.
Sure.
Dr. Ritchie. Dr. Ritchie.
Not yet.
Almost. You're close enough.
Candidate Ritchie right now. So Patrick and I have kind of kicked this ball back and forth for a while now. I think I'm speaking appropriately when I speak for Patrick, but he can correct me since he's here. We both are fond of a living wage philosophy of compensation. I guess to just kind of get everybody on the same page, a minimum living wage philosophy of compensation is when a organization kind of does their own study within the area that they operate, and they determine what the minimum amount of money someone needs to earn in order to live in that area. And then they adopt a philosophy that they're not going to hire anybody to work for them below that rate. So I use ChristianaCare, one of our neighbors to the north. They did this, and they came up, their minimum wage that they hire employees at now is $15 an hour. because where they operate, they feel that that is the minimum amount of money a person can earn and be able to be provided the necessities of life for people generally need. So I wanted to kick this idea out to the commission to see if the commission wanted to, I guess first do a little research on a living wage, like not necessarily what a living wage would be, but the philosophy, the idea of it, you know, or whether or not, you know, there's an ethical responsibility or whatnot, just that whole piece. And then if the commission felt it would be pursuing or be beneficial to pursue some research to have an understanding of what a livable wage, a minimum livable wage in the city of Havre de Grace would be. And then if that wage is different than what the lowest, you know, the minimum wage that we hire people at, does the commission want to formally make a recommendation to mayor and council to adopt that philosophy and you know, that specific wage? So I'm gonna try and share my screen with everybody. I'm hoping it'll work, but let me know if you can see my screen. It says host disabled participant screen share. Is IT able to correct that?
Do you have a green thing down at the bottom? It says split screen.
Yeah, when okay, now I'm getting it. So let's see, we're gonna do this screen share. So can you see my screen?
It says you
Yes, sir.
started screen
There
sharing.
we go.
Okay. So so this website, it's through MIT, the university, and fortunately, MIT has taken this living wage philosophy, and they've been actually tracking it for several years. And they have some extremely intelligent people doing a lot of work already for it. A lot of the background work is essentially done. So the highlighted area here, this just talks about the minimum living wage in the United States. So it says it's $16.07 per hour in 2017. And that's before taxes for a family of 4, 2 working adults with 2 children. And then it goes on to say it did go up a little bit from the previous year. So I'm going to move to this calculator that they have. And as you can see, it breaks it up by state. So we're going to visit our state in Maryland. And then it breaks it up by county. And then we'll go to our county. And then you get this really nice chart, which provides you their calculations based on whether or not it's just 1 adult by themselves, 2 adults, 1 of them working, or 2 adults both working. And then within each of those categories, it has a different number of children in the household. And then it gives you, the top line here is the living wage. It gives you a comparison to the poverty wage. And then it gives you a comparison to the current minimum wage for that state. So right now, Maryland, we're, well, actually, I forget the last time we bumped it. I think we might actually be higher than 10. But anyway, so then you can go into this technical document, and this is what I really like about having university-backed data, is that you can go into these technical documents, and they give you an understanding of what was taken into consideration to do these calculations. So for the purpose of this meeting, we're not going to go into all the details, but I can share with you something that I disagree with a little bit with this particular calculation, is that so MIT used the cost like vehicle maintenance. They took that into consideration. However, they did not take into consideration what it costs to purchase the vehicle. So these minimum living wages here don't take into consideration being financially capable of buying a car. They only take into consideration if you have a car already. So that's one of the things I don't really agree with, because most people, especially when you're living more towards the minimum wage side, you're gonna have a car payment. You're not gonna have the luxury of just buying it one windfall and paying the whole thing.
Does it take into consideration things like buying a new washing machine, a dryer?
I don't believe it does. But once again, like I said, I don't want to go down that road and get into the minutia today. I just wanted to show everybody kind of the information that's available that's out there, and to see if if the commission feels this is a topic that falls within the scope of the commission. And then if it does, if this is a topic that the commission would want to research, and then come up with a recommendation one way or the other, whether the city adopt minimum living wage or whether we don't as our compensation philosophy.
Are you looking for discussion, Chris? You just want to go through the thought for now?
Well, yeah, discussion's fine.
I guess one of my initial thoughts is that this doesn't apply to every job. We have summer hires, we have temps.
Mhm.
I don't know that we want to apply. This is saying, somebody who is already an adult, we don't, some of our hires aren't adults yet.
Mhm.
And so we want to be there. There's at least two levels to this consideration. The other thing is it doesn't take into account and what's the technical requirements for the job or either educational and or physical. So we want to, are we applying a rate just, for the humanities side of it, as opposed to what do we need the person to be able to do?
And that's why I'm kind of kicking it out to the commission to even so I kind of envision the research as beginning as what is the minimum living wage philosophy? What does a minimum wage take into minimum living wage decision? What does that take into consideration? Does it include different types of jobs? Does it include, do you parse out the summer workers or things like that? So that's kind of why I wanted to kick it out there and kind of start off small, is if the commission feels, is this something worth looking into? And then, we could have a couple people work on that and they can come back, with this is the definition, so to speak, of what a minimum living wage is. As you can see in this this screen, I mean, they parse it out into 3 different categories. And you're right, Fred. I mean, we have some people that still live at home. But then, we do have some people that are, employee and spouse, and they have 4 or 5 children. So we have people that exist beyond both ends of this specific bell curve. And kind of the way I envision a minimum living wage, like where do you target that? How do you land to it? Because you will have employees that the minimum living wage is more than the minimum they would need to live. And you would have employees where the minimum living wage is less than what they would need to live. So kind of the Chris Ritchie philosophy is I like to target one standard deviation within in the middle of the bell curve. That's going to get you 62% of your population. So that's kind of where you get the most bang for your buck. So that's kind of where my focus on this kind of stuff is.
Well, you have to be, I think, a little bit careful, because if you adopt philosophically this living wage idea, you could have an employee who is not married, has no children, getting $13.21 for the same job that somebody with 3 children is making $41.04.
Now, so yeah, to give a little bit of clarification, I'm not, so the minimum living wage does not parse out. It doesn't pay people based on these factors. This is just giving you information on if a person is in this situation, this is how much they need to live. A minimum living wage creates a minimum wage that regardless of your situation, you're hired in it. So you would have employees that maybe would make out better, and you would also have employees that would not be, it would not be adequate to meet the need. But a bulk of the employees, it would be adequate. So yeah, I'm not suggesting that we consider multiple minimum living wages depending on a person's marital status or how many children they have or whatnot. But it would be a pretty long process to wind up honing in on the one specific minimum hourly rate that we wouldn't hire people lower than. But anyway, like I said, I mean, you know, for the purpose of today's meeting, we don't need to solve the world's problems. I just wanted to see if this was a topic that the commission felt it wanted to look into further or not.
Well, what I remember from economics class is that minus government intervention, and then this might sound callous, but minus government intervention, that minimum wage is a self-correcting problem. That's something we looked at before with the police department. Now, we're not giving them a minimum wage based on the traditional definition of minimum wage from the government perspective, but you know, we can only recruit officers and retain those officers at a certain rate. That is the minimum wage in which we can retain those officers. If the minimum wage we can retain our employees is, you know, at A1 on the scale, $13 an hour, you know, that is the minimum wage. If we're retaining those people at that rate and holding them there at that hour, that is what I think would be, you know, the reasonable minimum wage. If we're not retaining them, then we need to look at increasing that. I think a lot of personal responsibility needs to go into improving one's, you know, life situation. Now I understand, you know, some people are unable to do that, and you know, us as government might be able to help. We, you know, as government employees, they have certain benefits that come along with that. I'm a government employee as well. I don't get paid as well, but I have better retirement, better benefits through the state and a few other things. So I've always felt that you know, the minimum wage is a self-correcting problem minus government intervention. But this is something that, I mean, if the group feels we want to look at, I'm fine with it.
Well, let me be kind of the black sheep on this one. Given the current economic situation, the current pressure on government budgets and everything else, I think we ought to table this for now. Because we got to deal with the police department and that pay scale. And it would be a big thing to bite this off at the same time. I'm not saying we ignore it, but I think for right now, we ought to not take that up.
Well, I think that Chris wanted to start it because it's going to take a long time, and something that not necessarily for this budget or even next year's budget. It might take, you know, a while for the group to actually get rolling. To at least start considering now, we can maybe next month start focusing on that, and this can actually roll right into number 7 as to what we want to work, you know, for our future topics of discussion for the group.
Okay.
I would be in favor of looking at this, but I guess I agree with Emery in a sense of giving the size of the group that we have here. Not for sure understanding the participation that we may have moving forward. I think we need to take care of item 5 first. And item 6 are the report may have some bearing on it. We don't know. It's great information to have, just to have an understanding. And I do think it's something that we're going to have to explore moving forward. There are a lot of variables with it. How do you couldn't just take what you're given there and then just apply it, like have an employee, a potential recruit. When I say recruit, I'm talking civilian or officer, fill out an application. Oh, you're not married, you live at home. This is where you're going to fall in. You have 2 kids and 2 of you are both working. So now you get, I don't think we see applying like that. I think this is just information to say, this is what it takes to live. And then we can decide what kind of workforce are we trying to nurture. I've always been a person who believes in grassroots and promoting from within and developing those people with where it's possible, where you can have that, you develop an ideology, a philosophy, whatever you want to call it. There are times when you need some fresh ideas and whatnot to come in, but that doesn't mean it's always just limited by just hiring people. If you have people with creative minds, ambitions, we have to take that into account, and we have to make it, and we get this oftentimes, Chris and I do, employees who come to us and they want to do more. And of course, in a small organization, how do we provide that? It's typically, when you're in a small organization, you wait for your predecessor to move on before you can move up. The world is changing very much in tech. We're developing some job positions as such, not so much, but some of the tasks associated with some positions that are beginning to modify and morph into something that wasn't what it was 5 years ago. And so I think it's important that we look at least that information in helping to develop these rates and or scales. Of course, it's only a recommendation that we can bring back to our committee and then ultimately to the administration, and they can do with it as they see fit. But it may prove to be a valuable planning tool.
Yeah, and to Patrick's point, so the living wage piece, it may not be fiscally possible. Like we all know, like there's work that we do. So whether or not the commission it would make a formal recommendation to the mayor and council, there'll also have to be a fiscal decision that'll be made. So I kind of look at it as two separate things. Is one, do we want to look into this as potentially, is it interesting to the group? Do we think it's worth the time? And then the other piece would be, if the commission wants to make down the road, wants to make a formal recommendation to the mayor and council. Councilmember Ringsacher, to your point about economics, living wage is definitely not an economics decision.
Mhm.
A living wage compensation philosophy is, I guess, more of a organizational ethical decision, things like that. It's recognized.
Elizabeth Warren's campaign.
What's that?
It was part of Elizabeth Warren's campaign.
Oh, I didn't realize that. But yeah, it's different than economics. But anyway, I mean that's all like part of the bigger conversation that we could have later.
But Chris, it's been put in economics in the current political environment. It's economic justice. You've heard them talking about all of that. And economic justice requires a minimum living wage, as opposed to, as your chart shows, the poverty line comes from the federal government.
Mhm.
You can't live on that. We all know that. I think we can study it. Yeah, but we got to be cognizant of what's going on.
Sure.
Just, you put out the two charts with the civilian and the other pay scale, the police pay scale. I mean, it looks like we already sort of meet the minimum to start with, because step one, block one is at that level, maybe. So we want to, I just don't want to jump ahead. I think if someone on our group, and there's others who aren't here tonight, maybe some can come back and help out and be in a second group while we're off doing the police thing. Someone else can do that, just to see how viable of, well, the way I put it, I was thinking of it is, we need to establish a process to establish a position to be able to present ourselves, and that's what we don't have yet.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, Chris. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I'm just saying that, we need to, someone's got to get, like you say, the detail. You're giving us a lot of detail here tonight, but kind of what's the next step from there?
And I agree, Fred, like by no means do I want to pile more work on us, because we're already going to be taking on quite a bit with what we're doing. So yeah, this was more just kicking out the group to see if it's something we may want to put we kind of present to mayor and council about some of our future goals, things like that, things we're going to look into, just that kind of stuff.
I'm
Well,
good.
then I
Um,
suggest we table it until after we address fully the police compensation.
Is that a motion?
I make a motion. I
I'll
can't vote,
second
but I
that.
make a motion.
I'll second that
Second
motion.
that motion.
All right, so all in favor of the voting members?
Aye.
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 All right, so carries.
Going into 7, and maybe it's a good segue. Emery brought up a good term that I wanted to build upon here, and that's that grade creep. And I think that's something that we all kind of, in the back of our minds, what do I want to say? We're always on guard for that. We don't want this thing to become a brush fire that then goes out of control and there's no like limit. And I say that to say this: we have some positions, in my estimation, that with the way the civilian pay scale is structured, we structured it such that we had some incentive for people who were taking on additional responsibility, education, other tasks that weren't always in their routine, where they could get an exemplary or an extraordinary step increase. We have then there's those individuals that will get, provided they have a satisfactory performance evaluation, they will get their standard step increase. Well, in some cases, some of these grades, because we built that in, an ability in which to, I guess what I would call reward ambitious, motivated people who are, the city is benefiting from their efforts. Then others are able to almost, for lack of a better word, ride those coattails, because that grade then has a higher end, top end, to what a position may actually warrant in the out in the marketplace. I don't want to get in specifics, but just to say there could be some of those positions that could be making what would I call it, a professional. I don't want to use that term either. Anyway, they're actually, we can get to the point where they're paying more than what the market really should be capable of bearing, and it's putting us into some it could put us into some dire straits, and that this thing just continues to escalate. So with that in mind, I want the group to consider, again, this may have to table, but it's not going to table before the next budget year, I can promise you that, where we cap certain grades or positions, and if someone does an exemplary performance, they'll receive a bonus as opposed to a salary increase. So they would have, let's say they top out or whatever that number is, and then when they do exemplary, they get a bonus. Now we would probably need to factor something in for cost of living. But again, I'm trying to put a ratchet or something on, and being careful of how far this thing creeps to the other end.
A bonus,
Am I coming across? You guys getting what I'm?
a bonus avoids another problem. And that other problem is known as the genius theory. The longer you're here, the smarter you are. So you just get pushed along the pay scale because it's so much easier to rate everybody as satisfactory. You understand, you all know how that works. Bonuses eliminate that problem because it's an incentive for somebody to really put out. And some governments are going to that already.
There's a secondary benefit of the fact that if you use bonuses like that and you do cap grades, is you're not adding to the already snowballing retirement pay.
That's exactly right.
But we talked about this, I thought, at one point. I thought we were saying the scale itself applies to everybody, but certain jobs, I thought we were going to say certain positions just don't have the technical acumen that people need, and therefore they really shouldn't warrant going all the way to, and I forget how the scale rates out, if it's letters or numbers, but but way out to the 25th and 30th type of level within a grade. I don't remember us actually saying which ones would be that, but I thought that was, I know we had 2 years ago talked about, looking at, and I don't get into specific positions, but some things require a college education, some things require higher plus certifications. Some things don't require any certification or any education, and that's fine. But those positions shouldn't go up to this 35th year of growth.
Yeah, that's all part of the specs.
So
Well, and not only that, the city just doesn't, we only, what do we have, like a $15 million budget? I mean, we just, I mean, I would love for all my officers to get like Howard County Police Department pay, but we just don't have that income,
we don't have the revenues to do that. Correct. That's why
Correct.
we're the middle. We're the guys trying to force back into the middle. That's our commission's job.
It sounds like it can be prevented by correcting the job descriptions by specifically allotting, the cap out on the grades.
It could, yeah.
Yeah,
I know we do that with the state.
I think that would be the simplest way to do it because you don't have to redo a pay scale that way. But to Patrick's point, that hasn't been done yet. So the I don't know if that's well. I'm guessing we need to put together a team to look at that too.
Well, I would prefer to have the support of the of this commission to with the recommendation, as opposed to just leaving it to one or two persons. I just want to make sure we're giving it the attention it requires, and a decision we make is an informed decision and serves the greater good of our the employees and the city as a whole. The citizens that we serve. So I really would rather it be a recommendation by the commission.
I have no issue with it being a recommendation. I think we already did recommend it at one point.
Well, I mean that we
As a
actually
commission.
established it, Fred.
Now, implementation is a different issue. I can't be privy to certain information amongst the employees and stuff like that. We can't go thumbing through records all the time. I mean, there's ways to do it and do it generically. Chris takes time to sanitize papers for us to see information sometimes. But I mean, if you're
we'd have to be careful to keep it catered towards employee. You want it to be towards the position.
Exactly. That's my point. It's got to be position, not employee.
Right.
And I thought, we did one sweep of these positions before and looked at them, and we can read again. So we're looking at, we've been around for 3-4 years now. It's time for us to go full circle. There's a lot of the stuff we already did over the years that needs to be, okay, that was your first cut. Now it's time for you to take another cut at it. And this is, I think, another one of those where I think philosophically, the group at one point said yes to the concept of capping, looking where the jobs, should have some sort of termination point. And it just, now it's time to implement it. And okay, well, if you need further guidance on that, that's what we're here for.
Let me take a step back real quick. Make sure I understand this wholly. We're talking about the grades, just the grades, not the steps, right? So how are they increasing by grade? I mean, shouldn't grades be a promotional increase?
No, so what I think Patrick's getting at is, we have various different positions in the city that may exist within the same grade. Yet those positions, when you consider the employment market, those positions, the market determines that they cap out at two different levels. One position may earn a higher income based on the market than the other. So currently we don't have positions capped out by step. Currently, positions are identified as what grade they're slotted in. So in theory, an employee could start at the bottom of the grade and then work their way all the way up to the top of the grade, given enough time. But that could create a situation where you have an employee making much more money than what the market calls for that position. So I think what Patrick's looking at doing is taking a look at all the job titles that the city has, and then understanding what grade they exist in, and then determining what step would be the appropriate top end of pay for that particular position.
And to get, there's a database out there, Chris, you sent it to me about 6 months ago that looks into that exact thing. It has hundreds and hundreds of job descriptions, and the hardest part is to make sure you got an apple and an apple
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
between the two. But I can't remember the name of the file off the top of my head, but shoot, sorry. But I know it's out there, and I've seen it and I've looked at it because I was going to use it to kind of start to look at comparisons of this, getting back to when we were going to recycle what are comparative things around the county versus us and everybody else.
You could Google Dictionary of Occupational Titles. That's what we use for Social Security.
All right, but this one was a state one, so I figured it was appropriate to use.
Well, as a state employee, that's what we use too.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good. Both of them are good sources. We should use them both. I agree, Jimmy. I'm not arguing the sources. I'm just saying that we have things to do all this. So if that's the help that Patrick's asking for, let's give it to him.
I think the current, if Jim, if it's still this way in the state personnel system, you move from grade 11 to grade 12, there is a requirement that you get at least a 6% raise.
It's you can't get any more than a 6%. For instance, when I went from a let's say from a 15 to a 16,
Right, yeah.
I got more than a 6% increase, so I had to bump down a step. The problem is we haven't had, I think we've had one step increase in the past 12 years. We were supposed to have a step increase back June 1st.
Right.
That was held. We were supposed to have a cost of living increase June 1st, and now they're actually talking about cutting our pay. So we're well more than 20% below where we were supposed to be at this time.
From a theoretical point of view, there was that percentage in the state system where if you went from one grade to another, it was a minimum you had to get.
Now that's anecdotal. There's nothing that anybody's been able to produce that actually shows that that's actual policy. I've never seen it. Nobody's been able to produce it.
They're using the 6% as a cap?
Basically for promotional step increases, yes.
Oh, okay.
Or grade increases, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So Fred, what you were referring to is that the Maryland Municipal League has a very vast database that has specifically compensation data for municipal governments through the state of Maryland.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
So I guess my point to this whole question is Pat talked about it already. Patrick. Yeah. Okay. I think Patrick's reaching to us for help. Let's try to give him cull through all that stuff so he doesn't have to do it all on his own and say this looks like take each job description. There's 100 and whatever of them. And make sure that where should it apply, where should it, make sure it's uniformly applied. Helps to have 2 or 3 people look at that to get consensus on what is an application of something. Because when you read the data, you can be thinking one thing and it completely, it's like in the Army when I worked there. A tank is not a tank. A tank can be a 60-ton shooter or it could be a big thing with water in it. So you have semantics is important.
Well,
And so I think more I'd like to offer Patrick that help. We should do that, I think.
I think we should too, but the squeaking wheel here that needs the oil right now is Teresa's problem.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's we're a commission. There's 4 civilians and a bunch. I mean, let's get some people rolling on some of this stuff.
Okay. So we're still on 7, right? Let me find my paper here again.
It's the first element of 7. It could be
First
many
element.
things.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. I misplaced. There we go. So we do have an open position, and we do have an application pending. The mayor is looking to make an appointment, and we'll discuss that at a later time. It's not open to the public at this time. At that time, but we do have a candidate that we're looking to appoint for the open position. So that would be for Carolyn Zenner's position that was never filled. She filled mine when I got elected, and then when she got elected, that position was never filled. So we do have an applicant for that. Are there any other additional topics anybody else can think of?
Yeah.
All right,
Good job. Things moving.
All right, I will make sure that I get these notes typed up and out to everybody. Chris, again, I thank you so much for your diligence on this. And I thank everybody for attending tonight. I will make sure we get this all together. We had a great discussion. I don't want to discount your point on the minimum living wage philosophy, but I do think that Emery's right. We need to focus on the police pay scale first. Being that retention is one of our biggest issues right now, retention and recruitment. We need to make sure that our officers are well compensated so we can make sure that Havertide stays safe and continues to be one of the safest cities in the nation. And again, Chief, I commend you for the hard work you're doing there, and keep fighting the good fight. And everybody else, if anybody else has any other comments?
Stay safe.
I'd like to move that we adjourn.
You have a motion on the floor? You have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Have a second. Regularly moved and seconded. All those voting members in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys later.
Okay.
Stay in
Thank
touch.
you.
Everyone, thank you for your support.
And Jeff, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
My pleasure, guys. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.